welcome back to Verizon Vikings Training Camp Live. I'm your host, Gabe Henderson. Practice number 13 just wrapped up, and Vikings team reporter Eric Smith, who was at US Bank Stadium this past Friday, decided to join me again today. We'll get to Eric's 3 observations later in the show, as well as breaking down the running back position battles. But first, to start the show, I would like to bring in the third-year vet, Vikings running back Mike Boone. Mike, how you doing, man?
Pretty good, man. Thanks for having me.
Likewise. So my definition of you is the opportunity meeting preparation. Of course, we know coming in as an undrafted free agent, you made your way onto this team with, your spectacular play in the preseason. This year, not having a preseason, what does that mental preparation look like for you? It's it'll be a little bit harder, maybe the physical aspect, but, just hitting the ground, hitting the notepad, and just honing in on those small details, like, if we were having a preseason.
Mike, you mentioned your mental preparation. If we go back to last year a little bit, the end of the season, you obviously ran for 2 touchdowns against the Chargers. You had 100-plus rushing yards against the Bears. How much did that kind of end of the game stretch boost your mental confidence heading into the offseason and now in camp and with the season a couple weeks away?
Yeah, like you said, man, just boosting my confidence a little, I felt, positive on the, the blocking scheme of things, just a good way to end the season. And, go into the following year on a positive note, a little bit of experience under my belt, and that was about it.
We all know the team goal is to reach the Super Bowl, but for you, personal goal is heading into year 3.
Like I said, man, I'm just focusing more this year on those small details. I kind of told you guys before, that'll help me be consistent in this league. That's the goal, to be consistent as you can. So that's kind of, my main goal this year.
All right, so we are 2 weeks away from kickoff. Have you started counting the days yet?
Definitely, man. It's getting closer, man. You can feel it in the air around here. Just excited. I don't know how it'll feel with maybe the no fans in the stadium at first, but we got to play ball.
Hey, man, I'm looking forward to it, man. Best of luck this season.
Thank you.
Eric, 2 weeks until kickoff, 1 week until cut day. This week is huge. Going to observation, your first observation number 1. With this week being so big, who are some guys that stood out in practice today that, made a big impression to the coaching staff?
Yeah, time's flying by, right? Training camp is flown by. A big guy that stood out to me today and has kind of stood out in recent weeks is wide receiver Alexander Hollins. He came on the team last year. He was on the practice squad most of the year and then was on the active roster for that Week 17 game against the Bears. He's looked good in camp. And, Adam Thielen had a vet day today, so Alexander Hollins got some extra reps. You see him here with Sean Mannion. He got open all day. He had probably 4 or 5 catches in team drills where he just looked good. He had that deep pass on Friday at US Bank Stadium that stood out. But he's a guy that, Mike Zimmer talked about him this morning on a video conference. He's always had quickness and speed to his game, but he's getting open and he's working on the contested catches. So he's really taking his game, up a notch from being a rookie in 2019.
You talk about offensive side of the ball, moving to the defensive side of the ball. Was there a guy that stood out today to you?
Yeah, it's a guy we haven't talked about a ton, but it's defensive end Eddie Yarbrough. And he was actually on the Bills for a couple seasons, joined the Vikings at the end of the 2019 season last year. Yep. And he's looked at to me as defensive end depth. We'll see if the Vikings make any other moves to add a defensive end. But Eddie is a good depth player. He had a pass breakdown today. He was good against the run. He can rush the passer. He's probably not going to start. We know that, but he can be a rotational guy. And as we come into the final week of camp here, he is fighting for a spot, and he looked good today. So that's a good sign for Eddie moving forward.
Moving on to observation number 2, you talk about having a vet day today. Briley Beef was a guy that had a vet day. But speaking of that offensive line position, with him being out today, just due to, just him being a veteran, there was a lot of shuffling in that offensive line spot. So speaking of that offensive line position, were there any guys that moved around? And then 2, who made the most out of that opportunity?
Yeah, it was a weird look today, especially at the tackle position. We saw Riley Reef had a vet day, and Rashad Hill did not practice. So Brian O'Neill actually moved from the right side to the left side, and Ole Udoh moved up to the starting right tackle spot. He had been at the second team right tackle spot. So the interior of the line stayed the same with Dakota Dozier at left guard, Bradbury at center, and Pat Elfine at right guard. A little bit of a different look, but the line did well. So it was good for those guys, especially Ole, to get reps. He's looked good in camp. We mentioned him a couple times. But it was just a good day for the line. And even guys on the second team, like Blake Brandel got moved up to second team, and he looked good today too.
I think having that versatility is key, which proved on the offensive side of the ball today. Of course, observation number 3, moving on to that, the offense looked really good, even having those different offensive line variations. But at the same time, on Friday, you talked about how the defense looked really well. That's not saying the offense looked bad, but the defense really stood out. Today, the offensive side of the ball, who were some players that stood out to you? I think for me right now, Kirk Cousins is a guy that really, played really well today. But for you, who were some guys?
Yeah, it's Kirk. And Kirk always seemed to find a way to bounce back, whether that's in a game or whether it's in a practice. Kirk wasn't at his best on Friday. Like we said, the defense played well, but Kirk was slinging it around today. He hit Irv Smith on a deep pass. He hit Tajay Sharp was involved a lot today. You see the play right there to Tajay. We know how the Vikings like to run the ball. But yeah, Kirk looked good today. The offensive line looked good. The defense did get them at the end in a quick 2-minute drill. But overall, it was a good day for the offense, and that's good. That's good to see. Just Kirk, firing the ball around, hitting open guys on the run. And that's what the staple of a Gary Kubiak offense is, and that's what Kirk Cousins' strengths are: getting on the run, play action, and hitting those open receivers. And that was a perfect example today.
I think it's safe to say that today was arguably Kirk's best day of camp, and that's what you need going forward. In 2 weeks from the season, you need your quarterback hitting that prime. But moving on to the position battles, we look at Alexander Mattison right here on film. He's running back number 2, but moving to the position battles, you got Dalvin Cook at RB1, CJ Ham at FB1. I know people don't say that a lot, but fullback number 1. But Alexander Mattison, Dalvin Cook, 1-2 punch, but behind those guys, you got Mike Boone and Amir Abdullah. So when you look at this 1-2 punch, Dalvin Cook, Alexander Mattison, how do you see this thing playing out this year?
Yeah, I'll start with Mattison. And you mentioned the 1-2 punch. I don't know if there's a better backup running back in the league, if we can call him that, than Alexander Mattison. He exceeded a lot of expectations last year as a rookie. He ran for 462 yards and a touchdown on exactly 100 carries. But now that he's not a rookie anymore, and now that he knows Kubiak's playbook and he knows the offense, and he's not wowed by the NFL. Yeah, it's not a far assumption to think that he's going to get more than 100 carries, especially with how much the Vikings and Gary Kubiak want to run the ball. The Vikings have an old school coach in Mike Zimmer. They have an experienced and Super Bowl winning offensive coordinator in Gary Kubiak. And the Vikings want to run the ball, and Mattison is going to be a big part of that running game. We know that Dalvin Cook is going to be the number 1 guy, but Mattison is a good number 2 to have.
Almost 1,600 rushing yards between Dalvin Cook and Alexander Mattison this past year, 14 touchdowns. But when you move to the 2 guys behind those guys, Mike Boone and Amir Abdullah, what value can they bring to this running back room?
They can bring a lot, especially the versatility. We talked to Mike and how he's prepared for the mental side of the game. But with Amir can do a little bit of everything. We saw with the Lions, he was one of the league's best kick returners, and he's had that same role here with the Vikings. He can catch the ball out of the backfield. He can run the ball, and just his versatility. If we need him for a few plays here or there, he can go in and make the play. So both Amir and Mike, offer different roles for what the offense likes to do. It's obvious that Dalvin and Mattison are the 2 main workhorses, but you need depth, and Mike Boone and Amir Abdullah certainly provide that on offense.
476 rushing attempts this past year, 4th overall in the NFL. But we're going to look to this group a lot this upcoming year to run the ball and be, the anchor of this offense. But Eric, thank you again for your analysis today. Make sure you guys stay tuned to Vikings.com for all of your training camp updates and highlights. It's the last full week of training camp before cut day is on Sunday. So guys, make sure to stay tuned to Vikings.com and following us on all of our social media platforms. We'll see you guys tomorrow.